All righty. Good morning, everybody. Hope y'all are doing well. Thank you for bearing with me a minute. I had some stuff to get together on YouTube to make sure everything would get out and everybody would see it. But today we have a long-awaited guest. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time since I initially talked to our guest, Mr. Tim Schaaf, today. And just to kind of lay out over it, he's going to go in depth and lay it over because he was everywhere with several different teams doing a lot of stuff. But he was with ST Anaconda, he was with RT KRAIT, he was also with RT Alabama, and I believe at Khe Sanh he was on a team that didn't really have a name, or if it did, he did not know about it, which is how Khe Sanh operated. But a lot of experience, a lot of stories, and a lot of individuals we've heard and read about. Mr. Tim was around, and we're going to get a lot of stuff from his point of view today. So without further ado, we're going to jump into it like we always do and ask a little early history of Mr. Tim leading before the military, and we'll get into Vietnam as soon as we do that. So, Mr. Tim, again, thank you for joining us today. It means a lot.
Well, thank you, Bud. I really appreciate you having me on. I do. I know it's been a while. We talked about it, and it's just, I've been between moving from Colorado out here in North Carolina and some other things. Yeah, but here we are, and
Here we are.
I've got my wall decorated in my new house, partially anyway. So, yeah, let's have at it.
Yes, sir. And we'll actually, Mr. Tim's got some really interesting photos that as we go along that he's going to be showing us that I don't have because I've got a lot of good photos to show off today that even he was surprised to see. So this is gonna be a lot of fun today, guys. Um, all right, to kind of get to know Mr. Tim a little bit better, and guys, y'all know Mr. Tim was on a SOGcast with Tilt. I'm blanking on the number. I was listening to it earlier, but literally type in Tim Schaaf SOGcast, pops right up. Um, but to get to know you a little more, where were you born and when were you born, Mr. Tim?
Well, yeah, a little bit of background. I was born in Indiana in 1945. Uh, Family had been there for generations, and then we moved from Indiana to California in 1955. So I got there about 10 years old, and we lived there. Went through school, high school, etc., and then ultimately, uh, well, joined the army. I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have. I think a lot of us guys ended up going in because we are getting nudged a little by the draft,
Mm,
and I didn't take a. They had the draft, but there was a couple of semesters there where I didn't take enough units, so I ended up having to join. I ended up joining so I could have a choice. Like,
so you grow not to go forward too quick. Growing up, moving from Indiana as a young guy to California, huge change. I'm assuming, especially going to the San Fernando Valley. What was a young Tim up to? Were you playing sports? Were you
for
into
sure.
music? What were you doing as a young man?
Well, I was running all over the place. San Fernando Valley during that time in the 50s was wide open.
Mm,
Uh, we could do, you could go out and hunt rabbits. There were just not that many folks around. My grandpa, who we lived with, had been a great shot. He was on the. In fact, I showed you that photo. I don't know if anybody can see it. I've got it right here, but he's in this photo
yes.
right down here. That's the 1913 1913 Indiana State Rifle Team. That's the whole state rifle team. I think most of those fellows ended up being in World War One. And by the way, that was at Springfield 03, which was at 30-06. Same weapon that uh, that Sergeant York in that movie. There it is right there. That was a very accurate weapon. And he was in a lot of national matches, etc. A great shot. He taught us, myself and my two brothers, how to shoot right out there in the San Fernando Valley. And it turns out that was extremely valuable, because by the time I got into the Army, I could really shoot. I knew how to shoot and knew, and very familiar with rifles, especially. Not so much with pistols, but with rifles. So yeah, so he played a big part in that. And so let's see.
Did you, with you starting to shoot like this and your grandfather being such a good shot, being with the WW1 generation and two, were you already thinking about the military, or were you thinking of college first? What was on your mind?
I think as kids, especially during that time, the 40s, my memory in life probably began in the 50s sometime. So we were watching all of those World War II movies. There were just a ton of World War II movies, and John Wayne's and Audie Murphy and Gary Cooper, all of those. So when you're young like that, it's almost and the fact that World War II had just ended, I mean, that was very real at that time. So you became immersed in that. So I never thought about, I didn't think about joining the Army, but you sort of play along with it. You see in your mind and your buddies, we played out in the backyard with my brothers and my cousins, and we throw rocks at each other, acting like they were grenades. So we all ended up with scars. But yeah, so it was an unusual time, a period of time, because of the war had just ended, and then we went to California. Everything was brand new and all of that. We learned how to shoot, and continued that actually. And then when I got into the Army, I was getting drafted because I didn't take enough units, and so I ended up joining. I wanted to have a choice, so I joined in. It was June of '66, and went to basic training, and then took all the tests. And passed the test for the Officers Candidate School. And then my AIT, that was called Advanced Individual Training. You're familiar with that. My platoon for that was actually, everyone had been accepted to OCS. So it was an OCS platoon at, so everybody went, except about halfway through AIT, this really dashing young fellow with a green beret came in and gave a pitch on going into Special Forces. I had thought about it before, by that time you heard that, the Ballad of the Green Beret and Barry Sadler and all that. Well, that's pretty cool. That beret was pretty cool. And so I took the Special Forces test there, which, by the way, was much more difficult than the OCS test, longer. When I passed that, and instead of going to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for OCS, which I had orders for, I ended up going to a jump school, which was a prerequisite for Special Forces training at that time. And I had those orders in conjunction with my orders for Bragg and Special Forces Training Group. So that's what I did. So I went to Fort, it was Fort Benning, Georgia, jump school. I wanted to say something too about, I know there's probably a lot of young fellows that watch these programs and some of our recollections. But when I got to a point, we drove up one night from the airport, and they picked us up in a bus to go out to Fort Benning. And we're all passing through the gates there at Fort Benning. It's at night, and I look up, and there were these red lights way up. It looked like they were up in the sky, and they were really. They turned out to be the 250-foot towers there, and one of somebody's, what the heck are those? You know, and somebody's, you know, those are the towers. You're going to be pulled up there on a rope, and they're going to cut you loose. And I'm looking out the window, looking at these things, and I'm serious about this. At that moment, I knew that I couldn't do it.
Not a fan of heights.
Well, I hadn't even thought about it. It was just like, good Lord, and I just knew I couldn't do it. I knew I couldn't do it. So the point is that a few weeks later, and we're going through the process. It was probably only 2 weeks later, and we get to the point where we're getting pulled up on those ropes and go up those towers that cut you loose. By that time, all the training, you know, they do such a fantastic job, or did then, on putting young men through that program that it was no problem. It was no problem. Same thing with the jumps. You know, the jumps, you know, 1,200 feet. You wanted to jump from higher so you could have more of a ride. But yeah, so that was one point in my life where I started to realize, you know, you can overcome fear. You can overcome fear. So that's what happened there. Then I ended up going to Fort Bragg. Briefly went through combo school, the 3 phases: phase 1, combo, and then phase 2. That lasted almost a year. Graduated in I think it was October of '67.
Combo, I don't mean to jump in, but this is very important for SOG history. When you were in combo, if I remember and understand correctly, wasn't one of your instructors a future SOG veteran as well?
That's a good point. That was Villarosa. Sergeant Villarosa was one of our areas right there. He was everyone's cadre. He had a great reputation. He was an amazing combo man. The story was that one of the great universities in our country had actually studied him because he could listen to 2
different combos coming in.
Combo, yeah. You know, the classes that we had to go through and learn, and he could take a Morse code in both ears at the same time and write down 2 different messages code. And that, you know, before that was like impossible. So that was he was also a great instructor, a good guy. He'd help guys when they really needed it. He was a no-nonsense guy, but he was super one of my favorite and one of the best instructors that any of us had. We all remember him. So anyway, I, at the end of training group, I volunteered for Vietnam because I think everybody else was. We knew we were going to Vietnam. Very, very few didn't anyway. So I think the idea was to maybe have it a little bit easier if you, yeah, that was me when I got into training group, the photos that they took. That was when I was a young man. Jeez, that brings back some memories.
Were you when you graduated the training group? What was the at this point in time, considering there were some groups that weren't around still? What group were you assigned to first before going to Vietnam?
The sixth.
Wow.
The sixth. And I think a lot of guys, I think that was sort of a way station for a lot of guys. I was in the sixth for maybe a month. So I remember getting done with training group, going to the sixth, and then going on my 30-day leave before I went to Vietnam. So I was in the sixth for like a minute and a half. Came back from and ended up getting orders, had orders waiting for me, and then shipped off to Vietnam and arrived there in halfway through December. It was before Christmas. It was in this, I think, the second week of December of '67.
Mm-hmm.
And got into yeah, this is an interesting, might be interesting. We flew into Cam Ranh Bay and then went up to Special Forces headquarters at
Nha Trang.
Nha Trang, and where all Special Forces guys would get their orders to be divvied up amongst a number of different places. You know, the A-teams and SOG and in Camo. I had an opportunity to stay right there in Nha Trang, which was like a little city. To work in Camo there, because I had done well in the school and actually do Morse code. But as I walked around, you go around the train, and they had like E7 running an ice cream parlor. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
They had massage parlors, you know, with young lady, beautiful young Vietnamese girls, and then the bar, you know, the club was huge. It just it didn't hit me right, frankly. I didn't like it. I didn't like the idea, and I didn't know anything, but I knew there were some guys out there somewhere out there in the bush running around doing the difficult work, and maybe some of these guys had done that. I don't know, but I didn't especially like the place. So you ended up going. You go through the process of checking in. You've got all your files. You go to the what would be the medical department, etc. And then you also go to where they do your assignment. And I went there with another fellow, and we talked about volunteering for SOG. And we both decided we're going to volunteer for SOG. So we got there, and this I think he was either an E8, he might have been an E8 or a sergeant major, and he's got this big map of Vietnam. It's all sitting out there, and it's where and we said, well, we want to go to SOG, and he virtually talked my buddy out of it because no, you don't want to go. Yeah, you know, I don't know why he did that. Maybe I don't know. But at any rate, he ended up going somewhere else. I ended up going. I don't know why. I think it was just you didn't really know what they did. You heard about it back in Bragg. And they didn't call it SOG, they called it CNC. In fact, orders, like command and control. And, you know, they weren't supposed to talk about it. It was top secret, you know. It sort of made it even more attractive because of that. But so I ended up, volunteer for SOG. So I went up, at that time, I got orders and they flew me up to Da Nang, and then we were picked up. Flew up there on a black C-130, and at the airport there, these Green Berets who acted like they knew what they were doing. They picked me up and took me over. And on the first day, the guys I met Charlie Wilcox and Bob Doherty. They were two of the other guys on my first team, which was Alabama team. And I also met Pat Watkins. That's Charlie Wilcox. That photo was taken in Hotel 9. It was either Hotel 9 or the one we went to right before that. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know why that had to be either Watkins or Doherty to take that photo. I have no idea why they did that, because there were bad guys all over the place.
The hottest area of CCC's AO there for a while.
Say again?
That was CCC's or FOB2's hottest area there for a while. Hotel 9.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know that, don't you? Okay. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I'll tell you how some of that worked. Initially, our team, and I ended up being on Alabama team. Charlie Wilcox was the 1-0. Bob Doherty was the 1-1 assistant team.
Anaconda first. Anaconda.
What did I say? Alabama?
Alabama, yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Yeah. Anaconda. And then, so we went up to, we were assigned along with Pat Watkins and his team. The two of our teams were assigned to FOB2 to run missions out of there. That was yeah, there it is. They took that photo right before we went in on the second mission into Hotel 9, because Pat's in that photo. Pat's on the right there, Pat Watkins. And he ended up being one of my best friends throughout almost the entire time. He left before I did, but he got there a little bit earlier, and I extended. I ended up being there 15 months. So anyway, that's an interesting photo. So the two teams went up. I've got to tell you a couple of things here about FOB2. Now, because you look at, okay, FOB4, you talk about that. And I ran missions out of 1, 2, 3, and 4 at different times. It just worked out that way. It's not like I got kicked off of every team I was on. In fact, they made me a 1-0 when I was an E4.
Wow.
And they told me at the time that I was the lowest ranking 1-0 in the project.
Oh.
I don't know how, that made me feel good, but I didn't stop and think by that time that so many of the fellows had either quit or had gotten
killed.
Yeah. Yeah. We had as you know, 68, there were probably almost as many fellows. We lost as many men during that 1 year as all the other years put together.
Mm-hmm.
We're close to it. We lost about half of the guys.
Whole teams.
That was a rough year. But you don't know it when you're going through it. You don't know that. So we were set up after we trained. We went out to that training facility out there. It doesn't matter. We went out there. They got overrun sometime later.
Cam Duck. Yeah, we went out there to train for a couple of weeks, and then came back, and then boy, we were ready. We didn't know shit, but we thought we did. But you don't really know until you do those missions. You can plan on them. You don't really know. And before I go to that, the first team that went out was Villarosa's team, and that was out of, when we were still at FOB4 there at Da Nang. Villarosa and his team were in the same hooch that we were in. There were two teams of 3 men each in each hooch at that time. So there were 6 guys, 3 on each end, and so you got to know a little bit about him. Of course, he had already been my cadre there at training group. He had a tattoo on his neck
it was a dotted line all the way around his neck, and then right here in the front it said "cut on dotted line." For God's sakes. Yeah. And so he was selected to be the first team to go out of FOB 4. They ended up going out, and we were getting commo back every day, because this is nobody else in the FOB. None of the other teams had gone out. None of them had had any experience. Not one man had ever been on a SOG recon team. So we were extremely interested in this first mission. So every day we're going down to the combo bunker to see what was going on. We'd get these little bits and pieces. And the first day that they were in, we heard, well, that there was some combo, and it said they had trackers on us. Trackers. And we all looked at each other and said, what in the hell are trackers? We didn't even know. Second day, trackers on us. And the morning of the third day was when they got hit, not by trackers, but NDA, and they got
massacred.
They tried to keep the information from us.
Mm-hmm.
I think they thought they were doing us a favor by not telling us, but the team never came back. And then we found out, it turns out, I believe that Zabatowski from FOB2 and his team went into on a bright light and tried to, I think they got, they got Villarosa's body out of there, and then the team split from there. There were two other fellas that's Zabatowski right there. Yeah, great guy. Pat was really good friends. I'll tell you about that in a minute when we get up to FOB2, which is another incredible experience, really, and it was more visceral than my first impressions of FOB2. You could feel how dangerous these guys were.
Wow.
But anyway, so that was our initiation. That first initiation into SOG was our first, all of us guys looking up to Villarosa and knowing him as this sort of an icon in combo, and he goes out and they never come back. None of the team comes back. They're just not there. And then, so that wasn't good.
You mentioned as well on some of the notes you sent me, but also, excuse me, during some of our talks that, it wasn't like the guys 69 or even later in 68 and 69 to where the 1-0 school was established. They did it for a little at the beginning at Cam Duck until they couldn't anymore. And you guys were literally OJTing this. There was nothing you knew about it. You were learning as you went along.
That's a good point, Bud. We talked a little bit about that before, I think, but that's exactly right. We didn't know what the hell. We had no people there that had any experience. So instead of sending a half a dozen guys over from FOB2 and sort of having some orientation classes and stuff they didn't do that. We had guys that were smart and devoted and ultimately did a real good job, but it was a learning experience and it was very costly. And our first two teams, after, let's see, after the thing with Villarosa, we were sent two teams. It was Watkins' team, it was one of the snake teams,
Moccasin,
and he had his guys, and then we had
Anaconda with
the Anaconda team, and I was still the 1-2. I was a radio operator. And so we went up. We had very briefly our first mission was in a place that was just over the border from where the 173rd had their big battle at Dak To. And a few months before, where they got that was a difficult. I knew somebody was in that battle. Some of those guys got overrun. The NBA were very determined, but then they retreated back into Laos. So we were sent out there, and in listening to some of the interviews that have taken place, you get the idea that everybody just went out there and got into a big battle and came out and didn't really accomplish anything, because not too much was talked about what their missions were, what they accomplished, those missions. And we had, as you know, we had like 5 different types of missions. We had point reconnaissance, general reconnaissance, wiretaps, a couple
prisoner
of
snatches,
POW snatches, which are a lot harder than they sound. So anyway, when we moved up to FOB 2, and Watkins is there. See, Watkins was really good friends with Zabatowski, and I think we went out on our first mission. Prior to that, Watkins had his own team. Doherty and Charlie Wilcox and I on Anaconda, we went out on the first mission. We were out 3 days. Fortunately, we didn't make contact. Now we went in to find where these the NBA that had withdrawn back over into Laos. We went in there to find them, so they could bomb them, so they could figure out where they were, so they could deduce possibly when they would come back into Vietnam and attack again. So that's what our primary mission was. We went in on the first day. The first day we had tractors on us. The first day, and they were a little different because they didn't have the guns. They didn't have the gunshots. Pop, 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 pop. But we heard them bang. We heard them clicking. Didn't know what it was at first. Found out really quick that they were banging these bamboo sticks together from one side, click, 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 the other side, and the other side, and they sort of moved with us. We didn't know how to get rid of them, but fortunately we weren't attacked. The second day we moved closer, and we were just reconnoitering, looking through this area that we were told that this may be where they were hanging out. At any rate, so by the second day, we ended up finding walking into this huge bivouac area. Boom, was right in front of us. Fortunately, they had abandoned it, or at least they weren't there, which told us, they were either further into Laos, or they were going back into Vietnam. So that was some good intel. And then we, the next day, on the third day, we got pulled out and came out of that. And I think we got some rounds fired at us on the way out. But other than that, we came out pretty slick and didn't get into a firefight. And we learned a lot in 3 days. It helped us. Immensely. And that was just fortuitous. That was just a lucky break that we had, because many teams went in on the first time and just jumped into shit and never had a chance. We at least had a chance to acclimate to the environment and have some contact with the trackers, etc. So we learned a lot. We got back to, we had a mission under us, That was pretty cool. So anyway, after that, I think it was after that, Pat and I ended up going to the club. The club at FOB 2 was like no other that I'd ever been to, man. They'd been in the big club down there at the main, special forces. It was just a big, huge club. And then we had a little club there at FOB 4. which it was still being built, by the way. But FOB two, we walk into that place and it was different. Let me tell you, the first time I walked in, Pat had already met up with Zabatowski, and they were going to meet to have a drink. And that's what we did. I came along. I didn't know who Zabatowski was. And so I walked through the door of the club. Pat's right here. I still remember this. Pat's right on my shoulder here. And Zabatowski ends up being to our left, further over. He's there sitting by himself. I didn't see him at that point because my attention, when I came into the club, I opened the door, come into the club, and about 15 feet in front of me is this guy facing me, sitting at the table by himself, bald guy, and his head shaved. And he's looking right at me, and he starts yelling at me. And it was gibberish. I couldn't even understand what he was saying. And I'm like, hell? And he's blah, 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 and he's doing all of this, and he's got a bunch of empty beer cans on the table. He's all by himself. And then I hear Zabatowski yell across the room. He says, "Stand down." Yeah. So guess who that was?
It's got to be the one and only Mad Dog.
Mad Dog. And he was, in my view, at that moment, he was a mad dog. He was crazy. He was crazy. And I think there was something telling in not only the way he reacted, because there is no way in hell I'd go anywhere with that guy. And the other thing was that he was by himself, which may tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
But he did a lot of missions. He became, you heard stories about him being forced to take an R&R and just going to another FOB and going out with another team. No, he was a very unfortunate,
tragic case.
It was a tragic. It really is, and the commanding element of I think bore some responsibility because they took advantage of that man because he was nuts.
He needed to go home, and they just kept what?
And I shouldn't have said that.
No, it's.
He definitely wasn't acting normal, and that day I can't. It's no. Anyway, that was that incident. And then we go over and we sit down with Zabatowski. I didn't know who Zabatowski was. Nobody did really. But he starts telling Pat and me, I'm introduced to him, we sit down, have some beers, and he starts telling us about this latest mission he just got back from. He still heard from it. It was that one.
The DSC op.
It's the first time I'm ever listening to a real, serious SOG mission. I'm sure my mouth was open. And Pat too, because it was extraordinary. It was the mission where he got his CMH, and I don't know if they had already put him up for it. I think they were planning on putting him up for it, and it was one of the reasons why he wasn't running any missions for a while. He was also injured,
badly burned.
Yeah. I think he hurt his back too. But
broken. And did you mention a well-known name amongst the men of your generation and even some after that are knowledgeable? Did you mention also that Snake Adams was around at FOB2 at this point in time?
Oh yeah, Snake Adams, this tall, lanky guy. He was one of those guys. He was one of those frickin'. He was crazy, man. He was funny. He was one of the real guys, man. Yeah, that's him right there. Yeah, he was a tall, skinny guy.
This is in November or September of '67, and you might have been down in Khartoum around this time. Well, no, this was a little bit early. This is when they're opening the FOB2 club, as a matter of fact.
Let's see. I think he was. Let's see. That's not September '67. Yeah, I remember him from. Let's see. It says FOB what?
FOB2.
Is that? Oh, okay. Yeah, he was. But you know, here's the other point about that club. You somebody like me go into that club and you walk in that club at night and you could feel it, man. It was in the air. That was a dangerous freaking place. And everybody got along, great guys, just like all the SOG guys, man. They're funnier than hell. That's another point I wanted to bring up. I don't think it's brought up enough, is they're just so funny.
Hilarious.
Absolutely the funniest guys I've ever been around. And bright and obviously courageous, obviously. They didn't have to, you know, you know by now that we didn't have to do that. We didn't have to do that, but and especially after a few missions. Anyway, so that was that night, and then we went out. We had one more mission there at FOB2. We went out into Hotel 9. And,
the bad mission.
That was, you know, we got briefed and all of that. I was, as I said, the radio operator, and but none of us had any experience. And what happened there was Pat, for some reason, he volunteered to go with us. He didn't have to go. I think it's because he was concerned about us, and we were real good friends by that time. I love the guy, still love him. He could be hard nosed, but we always got along. I don't think we ever had an argument while we were over there. But anyway, he went with us, and he brought his 01 with him. So we had two more. So we were like more or less, we had 4 Americans, and we had, I think we must have had like 11 guys, 10 or 11 guys.
Wow.
And that was, let me, you know, I can tell you a little bit about what happened on that mission. So here was the mission. You see, it wasn't just go out. I mean, this was planned out. This was a good mission. And what happened was, the plan was there was this major road that went through the area, and the plan was to have 2. We called them spike teams at the time. They didn't change the name. Some people get that confused, and because they changed the name to Recon team. I think it was probably just a new commander who wanted to impress his wife. Nothing changed. They were the same teams, you know. And I've read some, you know, where there's some question about whether, how were they different at all? They weren't different at all. So this, at that time, they were called spike teams. And so we, the mission was that 2 spike teams would be put in at either end, about a few hundred yards apart. They would be put in first, and then a hatchet force was to be put in between us. Wow. And they would be the element that would attack the convoy. They had some intel on a big convoy coming through there. So the hatchet force, I don't remember whether they were just a platoon or whether they were a company. I just don't recall, because I just don't recall. So we were the first team to be put in. And we get off the choppers. We're in a little stream bed. I remember seeing elephant tracks along the stream bed, which is pretty cool. You know, they had elephants over there. And we ended up moving up. It was hard to stay off the trail. You know, one of the real important rules of SOG Recon was stay off trails. Don't walk trails, man. Don't walk trails. But this place had so many trails. There'd be a trail, and there'd be another trail running parallel. There'd be 15 feet away, there'd be another trail. So we walked up this trail, get to the top of this hill, and that's where that photo that you just showed of Charlie Wilcox took. I don't know what we were thinking, and I think that was. I think Doherty took that photo, but yeah, that's Charlie. He was a sweet man. He was a good man, damn good man. The Indians loved him, absolutely loved him, and that was a Vietnamese team, and they were good. They were nuns. They were, but they're Vietnamese, if that makes sense. They're Vietnamese citizens. They were nuns, Chinese extraction. So anyway.
Oh wow. Okay. Nungs. Okay.
Yeah, and then so anyway, so we get up to the top of the hill. We took a little break, and then we go back down the other side of the hill. Get down to the other side, the bottom of that hill, and there's it's jungle, but you could tell they're like Watkins made mention of it later on after we got back. He said you could see along the bamboo, some of the bamboo was rubbed up against. There were so many guys going through there that you could see some of the bamboo had been rubbed off. So many guys had passed, bad guys. We got down to the bottom of the hill, and we started to stretch out and started to move, and we were in an old bivouac area, old North Vietnamese bivouac area. So we had lumps and holes, and we were moving right along the edge of the hill there. Pretty good size hill. And we stopped. I'm about the fourth guy back. There was an ditch between myself and Charlie, who was the 1-0 in front of him. And then there was the point man in front of Charlie, and I also, Doherty was up there. And for some reason, I was behind Doherty, one guy at least. So I had the PRC 25, and we're squatting there. And it was, at that point right there, it wasn't all that dense. It was fairly open to my left. And I looked over, and out of the jungle there, a line of North Vietnamese came out of the jungle and walked up the trail. If it wasn't the same trail we had just come down from, it was one that was parallel to it. And I'm squatting there and I'm watching them, and they're only 25 yards away. And I even noticed, I noticed the uniforms, the weapons they were carrying. You make mental note of all that because you're trained to. You try to remember everything. I had my weapon, my Cora 15, pointed at them, and I was squatting in, that Asian squat, and I'm watching this. I look at the guy in front of me. The indigent in front of me is only about 4 yards in front of me, and he's squatting, facing towards the right. He doesn't even see these people, because I was trying to let the element in front of us know that I had seen these guys. I didn't know if they had or not. And so I counted them, and there were 21 that, and I noticed one of them. He's a nice looking guy. He looked like he had just gotten a haircut. I don't know why I remember that. It was, So they started moving up. They went up right up the hill, and then either the rear element of them had seen us, or it was three different guys. I think it was just the last. Well, I don't know for sure, but just as they had gotten up the hill and out of sight, three guys stood up where they had been, three in VA, facing me directly, all bunched together. And the one guy in the middle started yelling in Vietnamese. And it looked like he was looking right at me. And it just sort of had, it was fairly open, but there were bushes, there were trees. But between myself and him, it was open. And it looked like he was looking right at me. And he got a few words out, which I found out later from the interpreter. He said, "Throw down your weapons."
Oh.
And I lit him up, and the three of them, and the just like that, the front element fired into them. They all dropped. I was, that's the first time I'd had any kind of a firefight. They dropped like rocks, and they were all no movement. And then there had been some other guys that we didn't know, so we started getting fire immediately from the fellows that went up the hill, but also there were some more from the left, and then eventually more from the right. They were coming out of the woodwork, and we were down. So I immediately got on. I had the Prick 25. They were putting in the other spike team and the hatchet force at that time. So they had helicopters. They also had A1Es, and so the helicopters were diverted over to us, and I called in the gunships. And one of them, man, he was right above us, and he was turning around, man. He was lighting them up. We had shell casings dropping down on us. And I'd never heard a noise like that in my life. It was like a cacophony. It was just so freaking loud, man. And so that went on for a little bit. And so anyway, I got on a horn. I was making direct contact with the helicopters, and then also we had two A1Es come up, and it made a quick pass over us. So I saw them, and then they came in from to my right, and I ended up putting out a panel. I crawled out, put the panel out. Watkins came up to me, but at that point wanted to know if I needed any help with anything with the radio. I didn't, and so he went back, and he had his own thing going on. So anyway, the E1As lined up, and I shot an azimuth to them where the bad guys were, and I said, 50 meters, which you're not supposed to do when they have napalm. But they were right there. You go look up the hill, and boom, they were shooting down on us and laying some heavy fire at that point. And that first A1E came in, and I'm just laying behind the panel, the orange panel that I put out, and the A1E's coming right at me. I can see him. I could see him, and for a split second there, I thought he was in it. I thought, I said, does he see me? And then he dropped his right wing, just dropped and slid over, and got on line with the hill, the top of the hill, and released his canister, and I saw that tumble down, and I hit that top of that hill. And I had a feeling I never had before, because it was horror at these guys screaming, and at the same time I was euphoric because they were it was killing people or trying to kill us. So that was unusual. Well, anyway, so they made two A1Es. They dropped two of them. We're continuing with the firefight, and then the choppers come in. They were H-34s. I don't know why I remember. I always remember which type of helicopter when we got picked up. So they were King Bees, H-34 Vietnamese, great pilots, great men, and they were touching down where they had actually put us in, because we made this big circle and came out, and I told you we were in their bivouac area. Well, the bivouac area was pretty flat to the helicopter where they had gotten put down. And so we called him in, came in one time, he flared out because he was getting too many hits, called in TAC air again, they dropped it. They dropped the second. That was when the second A1, he dropped his load. And so that was on the other side of the LZ. That lightened up, pretty much lightened up what was going on. So we weren't drawing as much fire. And then, yeah, the helicopter came in again, and he was coming down. It looked good. And then that's where we all just got online and just hauled ass towards the helicopter across this open area. Ran right by the three fellows the initial guys. In fact, one of the indige, he's running right behind me to my left, and he leans over and grabs one of the, turned out to be wasn't an AK, it was an SKS, one of the guy's weapons. And he grabs it, and we run back to got to the helicopter. And I thought that they had a A6 machine gun set up. That's what they usually had on those old H-34s. And I thought they were, man, I'm glad that he shot over our heads, because it looked like it was in. So anyway, we jump in a helicopter, and we're out of there. that SKS, Bob Doherty ends up with that SKS, and it ends up going back to the club at FOB 4. It was hanging on the wall in the club for a long time, and then I think Bob ended up with it when he ended up leaving. I'm not sure of that. Maybe or something.
Was this your you being commo and carrying the radio? Was this your first time
Oh yeah,
working such heavy fire missions and utilizing the A1s in such a drastic manner?
Yeah, it was the first time, and I got hit. By the way, I got hit in the right hip while that was going on, and so I had a number of new experiences, and it was upon reflection, when we got out of there. We were flying away in that H-34. I've never felt like that in my life. I'll tell you, I felt like I was freaking, I've never felt like that. Never since either, even though I'd been in a lot of firefights. That was the first one. I did a good job on the radio. I called in TAC air, did all of the things that I was supposed to do. And it felt amazing. It was amazing. So, I passed some personal. I don't know if I ever had any goals, but you never know how you're going to react in a situation like that until you go through it. And I was happy to see that I could do all my job. I didn't get rattled, and it was and so I knew I could handle it. And Yeah, it was important. That was really important. Watkins did a great job. He did all kinds of things with the back end of our group there. He had things going on. He's talked about that, I think, in some of his interviews. And we got back, and yeah, so they tried to they pulled some shrapnel out of me on my hip, but as a matter of fact, it's kind of interesting. It's only been a couple of months ago. I went for an X-ray. Um, I was supposed to go in this machine that has these real powerful magnets, but before you do that, you can't have any metal in your body. So they looked for and they found a piece of shrapnel in my hip, which was the guy was elated. Look, it's right there. It was good because otherwise it might have caused a problem in that machine that they were thinking about. So anyway, that was that mission. We got back, and that
I
was
mean that's crazy. I mean, in some of the notes, I mean, to get off and go into a NVA stronghold of, for lack of a better term, bivouac area, to where there potentially thousands of troops are, and for I think at one point Covey even says there's like 100 of them down
yeah,
the road heading for you guys, which that in itself also is absolutely ridiculous. And I thought it was very interesting. We always think of, not being touchy feely, but maybe the guys would get back and be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that this happened, or what happened." And you said that you never really talked about feelings or anything with your teammates. You did
that's
talk
true.
about getting better and wanting to learn the job, but you never really shared personal feelings like that.
It didn't, we would go back, and it's sort of an aside here, but we would go back to the club there at, whether it was at Fubai or uh, Kontum or later on, well, later on at Fubai. We did that a lot because there were a lot of young guys that were assigned to Fubai during that time. And every time somebody come back from a mission, we go in, we talk about the mission, either over drinks or what would normally happen would be a bunch of us would gather in one of our hooches. In fact, that was one of the things I believe that was, that photo that you have. I don't know if you have it available, but it's the one where Smitty is there with me. I'm I'm leaning up against the wall on the bed. Smitty, and then Eldon Bardwell, and then and then myself, and then on the other side it's Pete Bogg. There it is. There it is right there. Now the two guys with glasses, I have no idea who those guys were.
That is Ken Boyd, LT, for the Hatchet Forces, who wrote a book, and that is Mike Morehouse, that ran with Eldon on Michigan for a while.
Are you serious? See, I
Yeah.
never knew. I never knew that. Well, it explains the one guy because you could wear glasses and be an officer. I didn't. I just had no idea who that was. But there's Pete Boggs. He looked like a choir boy, tough guy, tough guy. Had ended up with 13 holes in his chest on that mission with
Jeez.
John Walton. Um, Walton got a silver star on that because he didn't just save that other fellow's life who is in the SOA right now. I can't remember.
Tom Cunningham.
Yes, yes. I remember going over to the hospital right before they took. He was only there for like a week, maybe 2 weeks. That was his only mission. Unfortunately, it turned out bad. He got his leg blown off. But John Walton saved his life because he stopped the bleeding, and so I knew that was Pete. Pete got a bunch of holes in him during that thing. That was an unfortunate incident, but you know, there were a lot of them. You can't, you already know by talking to so many of these people, you can't, you can only do what you can do. You can control so much, and then everything else is an aside. It was very, obviously very dangerous work, and you could be the best. And at some point I think it has to do with, you had to have the confidence or you couldn't do it. And so even if it was to some degree a false confidence, where I felt like at some point, I felt like I was the best. I felt like I couldn't do any more. I was good, but you can't, and you have to rely on that, because the other part of it is obviously everybody can get killed. Everybody can get shot out of a helicopter. The greatest recon man in the world, when he's trying to take his team in on an LZ and a rocket hits the helicopter, what the hell difference does it make? You're dead. Your whole team's dead. And that happened. A lot of great, really good men and strong recon man, that happened to them. It's just bad freaking luck.
Mr. Wilcox went down that way, didn't he? Your former 1-0, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, you know, we came back from FOB after that mission. We came back from FOB2 back to FOB4 with a lot of experience at that point. 2 missions, that's a lot of experience right there. And we came back, and then Charlie and 4 or 5 others, I knew every single one of them. They were all 1-0s. Great, man. Just really, every one of them was a great guy.
I have the names if you'd like me to read them out right here.
That's up to you. Go ahead.
Aubrey Bryan, unknown ST, Crescencio Cardoza, Charles Wilcox, Samuel Paget, the launch site officer, Captain George Deverall, and Mr. Pat Watkins and Charles Feller ended up going in the bright light on those.
Right. Well, that was an impromptu. The only one I didn't know was the officer that you just mentioned. Everybody else, I knew them very well. Very well, and they were all great guys, and all 1-0s. I knew all of them. We're very good friends. What happened there was there were 2 H-34s, and they were flying out to Camp Duck, right? Camp Duck, and the first time I ever went out there, I mean, you've got the compound. There's 2 compounds, actually. Our compound, and then there's a Special Forces A camp right next to it, and then an airstrip there. And we went out there on a couple of occasions. We went out to train. It was a lot of jungle around there, etc. And then later on, I went out there used it as a launch site. Watkins, it so happened his team did too, but initially. We went out there. The first time I ever saw it, there's just, the whole place is ringed with these mountains all the way around it. And I thought, man, I didn't know anything, but I could tell it wasn't a good place to put a compound when you got mountains all the way around. What happens if the bad guys get on those mountains? At any rate, sometime later that year, they got overrun, and that place was destroyed. But the first time I went out there, that was after Charlie was killed, and all those fellas. And man, that was a terrible day. That was a terrible day. Cause Watkins, it was my team. I don't know if I had been taken off that team at that point, but it was still my team. We had run missions, they were really good guys. and we had to go over there and tell them that Charlie had been killed. They loved Charlie Wilcox, I tell you. They loved him because he did so much for them. He was just really a good man. And they literally, oh my gosh, the little interpreter, he was good to firefight too. I remember him, that one mission I was just telling you about, he threw a grenade. He jumps up and he's yelling at these guys. He grabs a grenade, he throws it. There was a big, huge tree. I'm right behind him. Big, huge tree and a big, thick branch, and he threw the grenade and it bounces off the limb and bounces back in front of us, and we both jump back and behind it. That was, ironically, it was kind of funny. But yeah, he was their interpreter. I can't think of his name right now. Little bitty guy, tough as nails. And we went down there and told the team at their hooch that Charlie had been killed, and he just went up in the air. He jumped back, landed on the table that was there in the middle of the room. I remember this distinctly, and just and the table broke, and he went to the ground, and he was inconsolable. He could not. So anyone talks about ditch and about how different they are, and that's just bullshit. Those people have great feelings, great friendships, and so that was Charlie. That was a sad freaking day, I tell you.
I can only imagine.
Charlie was everybody. Everybody loved Charlie.
Did you you mentioned leaving FOB too, but I thought from our talks that you actually weren't on a team, your normal team, but did you actually go out on a one more strap?
Yeah, 2 times. Yeah.
Two.
I was an E4, man, and Timmy will do it. This I can't remember his name. Big, tall, skinny guy, and then his 01 had been around since the French. He was like in his 40s.
Whoa!
Knew everything. I mean, it was an experience. So I spent a little time with him, and then we went out a couple of times. Nothing that occurred of any major import. I remember we were getting tracked, and it was at night. I don't know why he was moving at night, and we pulled off the side of a trail, and we heard this noise, and these guys were a number of. It sounded like a larger element that was moving in on us, and we set up an ambush for them. And I can remember sitting there with my weapon, and this was after the other experiences, other firefights, and I was sitting there, and I'll tell you, my hands started shaking, and I think I did some study on that later on, because I didn't understand. It wasn't any different. It was cool. It was a cool evening. And what they say is that it's a release. It can be a release of adrenaline. And when the adrenaline releases, but I remember that. I thought, what the hell is wrong with you? You're not, nothing happened. We didn't ambush them. They somehow dispersed and went the other direction or something. But I remember that, just to let some of your viewers know that, we weren't infallible. That was just something that happened, which I wasn't any more fearful than any other time. Just the circumstances, I guess.
Involuntary dump of adrenaline giving you some I forgot the term I'm looking for, but it's just that come down that the body produces.
Yeah, the body produces it, and from what I've read, and it's that release, and anyway, I don't think I ever had that situation happen. Oh, I remember it happened one time when I got back from Vietnam, and I met this girl at a bar, really attractive girl, and it was she asked me if I wanted to come over for a drink, you know, and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sure, and she was attractive, and so I'm following her in my car, you know, I'm following her, and I know I'm going towards this girl's apartment, you know. I didn't have all that much experience in that kind of thing, but I started shit. Same thing happened. It happened back on that trail in Vietnam. And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
I started, yeah.
I've been here before.
Same effect as AK-47 sometimes, you know. But anyway, yeah. So where were we? So Charlie, all the guys that you mentioned were killed, and then I was that was a bad time there at FOB4. Those teams were devastated because they 5 or 6 teams were without, just from that, were without 1-0s. And so I was assigned to my next team with Kim Budrow, who was really an excellent NCO. He was, I think he was an E7, E6 or E7, and he had KRAIT, and I don't know what happened to his other. He had somebody else on the team. There had been just the 2 of them, but either they quit or whatever. That's what Bob Doherty came back from when we got back from Khartoum. We got back to FOB4. I came back from something, I can't remember what it was, and he was gone. He had quit. I didn't blame him at all. No, nobody blamed anybody, but he did have a family, and it was understandable. And he did his time. There were a lot of guys that ran 3 or 4 missions. That's Kim Budrow. That's Kim. He was a tough little cookie. And he was just so sarcastic and just sort of grumpy all the time. But I really liked him, man. Anyway, so yeah, what I was saying there was
Recon experience that he was with KRAIT at this time, would later on run the launch site, but was still running Recon at this point in time. And would you say had he been in the project or in SOG at this point in time for quite a while? Had he been on 1-0?
1-0s there at FOB4. I didn't really know him that well. That's my recollection was he was there. I ended up getting assigned to his team. I don't know if he requested me or I just don't know. But we ended up being on his team. We were sent back out to Cam Duck and as a launch site. And it just so happened that Pat Watkins' team was also sent out there at the same time. And that was in, it was in March. And by that time I'd had some good experience on the ground. I had done 4 or 5 missions and had some good experience. I was the assistant team leader. Yeah, that's me. That's a Cam Duck. That's Budrow. He liked to carry the radio, which is fine. That prick 25 was heavy. And so, there we are, man. That's cool. That's a great photo. Just impressed you have all these photos.
That's one of my favorites of you.
Kim, he was solid as a rock. If you keep your eyes and ears open, you learn from everybody. And that goes back to FOB4, all the way up to FOB3 and 2, and then up to FUBI. If you keep your eyes and ears open, you learn from everyone.
Mm.
And you have to, it was, and you could tell the personalities that weren't open to that. And it was a shame because it was dangerous work, as you know. So anyway, yeah, I went up there just briefly. Oh man, I'll tell you this one. I'll tell you this. So Pat goes up there, and we got rain in the AO, and so we didn't go out for it was like a couple of weeks. So we played cards, and there were we had our teams there, but it was just like four of us, like 4 or 5 of us that were just dinking around. And it was a fun time actually. And then, but it was so long. Every day we got up, got our stuff on, went out and stood next to the helicopters to see if we were going to go out there. And it was it got to you a little bit after a couple of weeks of doing that because you get worked up. Getting on that helicopter is a different. You're not just getting on any helicopter.
No.
You know what I mean? You're not taking a little ride down by the beach. You're going into Laos, and you're getting worked up for that. You've got to be absolutely sharp as a tack and have all your guys and know exactly what you're doing. They know what they're doing. And so when you do that, you get out there and you're standing there, and then you don't go day after day after day. It wears on you. But so we ended up finding what happened. There were only the 2 of us, and then right at the last few days, they sent out this captain, and I won't mention his name because there were a couple of guys that had issues. I'll tell you what they were as far as this individual, without his name. There's no reason to expose him in that way, because he was killed, so he gets set up with us, and we put him through the training, and he was going to carry the radio. He was going to be the one too. And that was fine. So we get out there. What happened was our mission was to go in. It was a general reconnaissance mission into this area where there was some slash and burn agriculture. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's some of the most primitive type of agriculture in the world. And what happens there is that the farmer burns a whole area of natural, in this case jungle, down to the ground, and then they plant, they plant their seeds or whatever they farm. So that's what happened here. And there were patches of open areas, large patches of open areas because of that, and then there were patches of jungle. And so if you went in, if you inserted during the day, you couldn't really move around because you couldn't move from a closed area. You're not going to walk through an open area, right? So we went in just at nightfall, and we moved at night. We moved from one area through an open area to another area. The sun came up, and we're still sitting there on the edge of this very thick jungle, and then we're looking out across this large area of completely burned down to the ground. And from our position, as you looked away, you could see at least 250 yards. That's very similar. That's exactly right. And so, but it increased in height. So from where we were, it was open, and then it sort of moved up and increased in height to about 250 yards, maybe even further. and they were high, and they were higher. So we're laying there. The Indians are on the outside. Budrow is on the other side of this captain who has the PRC 25, and I'm laying there just left of him. And we're looking out across this, because the sun's coming up. Looks like it's going to be a beautiful day. And look out right in front of me, which is where we walked into the jungle part. And you could see our tracks all the way. They had just burned it. We didn't know this until that morning, because we walked through it and it was nighttime.
You can see
every single footprint, all the way from me, literally 5 feet in front of me. And you look at this trail, this trail of team, all the way up as it increased in height, and then it vanishes because it goes behind there. And I pointed that out to Kim Budrow. So and then we're working on getting the hell out of there, right? Moving through the jungle, or however we needed to make a hasty move out of there. So and then at the same time we're trying to make commo with whoever, and good captain's trying to make commo on the PRC 25, and can't. And we all have, as you probably know by now, we all had the ERC-10 radios. Each American had an ERC-10, which was good they were good little radios. They didn't have as much range as the PRC 25, and even the 25. Sometimes you couldn't bring anybody up because the distances were too much. But at any rate, so we're laying there trying to figure it out. And I look up, and this one guy comes over the hill, looking like 250 yards away. And he's walking, he's just looking at our tracks. He's just walking along, just following our track. I'm at the end of that track, right? And then there's the second guy, and the third guy, and the fourth guy, and come to find out, I counted all of them. I'm trying to think, it was 28 or something like that. And 3 of them were NVA, and the rest were Pathet Lao.
Pathet Lao?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they were Pathet Lao. But they had cadre, they had NVA cadre. And they're walking towards me, and I'm trying to make commo. The good captain's trying to make commo. It's not available for him for some reason. And then, and as they're walking towards me, I finally make commo on the ERC-10. And what happened, I don't know if you're aware of this, but all of the American planes that were flying over Laos, they were supposed to be monitoring an alternative frequency, and that was our emergency freak that the ERC-10s were tuned into. So I actually picked up somebody, I don't know who, whether it was a fighter or whether it was a bomber, I don't know, transport plane. I get a hold of them. I said, we need and we've got, and so anyway, I made commo there, but let's see, by that time, these guys are getting pretty close to me. And then I finally got I communicated on the radio our location, etc. Told them that very, very briefly that we had a prairie fire emergency, which is what it was called. You know what that is by now.
Yes.
It's an emergency. It's prairie fire. Prairie fire was the code name for Laos. And so, and at some point, these guys are getting so close, I got to turn the radio off. Europe 10. And those guys walked right up to me. And they were no more than 15 feet in front of me. And we're lying there as flat as omelets or French crepes. And we all of the Indians, thank God none of the Indians opened up on them. Because at some point they were so close. See, we could have just annihilated them when they were still 100 yards away because they had no place to run. They were like right there in our field of fire. We were already spread out naturally there. We could have just killed every one of them. But then they got closer and closer. And pretty soon, there were guys that were outside of our line of sight on the right and left side, and they moved up real close to us. And they're talking right in front of me. They're jibber jabbering. We find out later on what they're saying. They're trying to figure out where we are. We know they came in here, etc. And then there's somebody's yelling, and then one of the guys empties his AK-47 over our heads, fires in over our head, and thank God nobody fired back. Which is a tribute to the Indians for not going crazy. But to back it up just a little bit, the good captain is laying there, and these guys are getting closer and closer, and Butler and our heads are like 3 feet apart, and the captain says, "You guys," at some point he says to us, "You guys take off, and I will shoot up the radio." Now this will give you an idea of what happens to people. Some people, when they're under extreme stress, and I'm serious about that. That's nuts, right? It's crazy.
Your lifeline, shoot it up.
I'll shoot up the radio. Yeah, I'll shoot up the radio, and you guys take off. What in the hell does that mean? So Budrow's laying over there, and he scooches up just a little bit. And he looks directly at me. Years later, he didn't remember this because I asked him about it at one of the conventions. But he scooted up there, and he looks over at me, and he says to the captain, he says, "That's okay, sir. I'll take the radio." So he took the radio. Thank God. Yeah, that was. So anyway, the good guys came. Anyway, the bad guys are right there, and they're firing over our heads. And then they back up and they split up. Half of them went one way, half of them went the other way to circle around all the way around to see if they could find our tracks. I assume find our tracks as it exited on the other side. And so they left 2 little helper bees. They weren't NBA. They had a sack with a strap over their shoulder, and they had in the bags they were anti-personnel mines, and they started putting them in right in front of us. And there were 2 of them just doing that. And so finally we got the choppers coming in. They were H-34s. They came in. They land right next to these guys who are on their bellies, and we ran right by them, jumped into the chopper and took off. Yeah, and then fast movers came in, and we were told that they hit those guys on the other side of the thing. Anyway, that was that mission. That was sort of different. That was different.
Wow.
Wow. And about 4 or 5 months later, that captain was killed. And my understanding was that he was the only one killed on that mission. I don't know what happened. I really don't.
Recon operation?
I just don't know. I don't. But I know he was killed, man, and I know his name. I've seen his photo, and it's a shame. It's a shame. He should have never been out there. He should have never been a captain in the Army in the first place, because he didn't make sense. I had a couple of different situations where I saw that type of mental dysfunction. And so the second time was not as surprising, I guess. You realize it just happens. And the second one was also, he was a lieutenant. That didn't mean anything. I mean, it could have been. There was a third time, actually. There was a third time that I didn't see it. Anyway, that was that mission. So we went back, got out of there, and then went back to FOB 4, and then Budrow was made Cubby.
Yeah, launch site officer. Yeah,
he was made, yeah, and so I was sitting there, and they, I had, according to them, all of this experience by then. I was in E4, and by that time, numbers were dwindling down there at FOB 4. It was kind of a depressing place, and I don't know why they decided this. It sure wasn't to make us feel better, because they took Pat Watkins and myself, the two of us, and they assigned us to FOB 3, which was up at
Khe Sanh. Yeah.
And they dropped us off on from an H-34 towards the end of the siege. We jumped off the helicopter, both of us at the same time, and run for the trench. And incoming, boom, boom, boom. We could hear it. That was our greeting to Khe Sanh. And I was given my first team. That was when I was in E4. He gave me a brute team, fairly untrained, and they said, well, we'll assign some other Americans here sometime. And it turned out that I was the only American on that team. So we were on the line there. Pat was there. I was there. We were there for 2.5 months. It was the most frustrating period of time for me, and I think for everyone that really wanted to get back at the North Vietnamese. We didn't like them. And the fellow that had my hooch, my bunker, I found out later on, he had gotten blown up. He was standing in a trench, and he had gotten destroyed a month before that, and then they brought a whatever in there and fixed it up again and put sandbags and everything, and that was my place on the line there at Khe Sanh. And I'll tell you, we didn't have enough in a way of. Let me tell you what I had. I had my own 50 caliber machine gun. I had my own M60 machine gun. They had about 20 igniters for mines out in the minefield, right there laying in front of me. Had my own car 15, of course. And that's the way it was for 2.5 months. Guys were getting blown up. There were a number of incidents where very unfortunate incidents where people, you couldn't do anything about it. You hear this boom, 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 this little pop, boom, boom. And that was Rock, where they had their 152s. And it was about, 10 clicks away, 10 or 12 clicks away. And they would wake us up in the morning with a few rounds. And then I ran a couple of missions out of there at Strap Hang again, because I didn't have enough. I didn't have another American on my team, so I strap hang with another team twice, and went up behind Rock, and very little was accomplished. We're trying to find exactly where the tunnels were. They had these tunnels, and then they would roll these
big
the 152s, the artillery pieces out on tracks, and then they just draw them back. That was the word. I never saw that personally. I don't know how they determined that, but that was what it was. And you'd have about 5 seconds when you hear the sound. You had time to jump in a trench, and if you didn't, and sometimes guys got blown to pieces. I know who that is. That's Pat's Watkins 1-1. He loved him.
Mr. Lou DeSada, God rest his soul.
Lou DeSada, man, he was such a good man. I'll tell you a little story about Lou. He had been in Vietnam with, I think, the 173rd. He was airborne.
Yes, sir. At Doc Toe.
At Doc Toe. He had been in some stuff, man. Well, what happened was he decided, I don't know why, but oh my gosh. That looks like Watkins and him.
That is right there. That's those two together.
Yeah. Well, they went into where the heck was it? Can't remember they had a heck of a deal there one time out there outside Khe Sanh. They ran a mission. they were talking to the NVA. It was like crazy, man. Did you ever talk to Watkins about that?
I spoke to Mr. Lou, and I'm still trying to get in touch with Mr. Pat, Mr. Lou, before he passed, connected us. But that's also the one to where Pat took him out on, I think this was his first one, because they had several funny instances, but where they got out and at night and they were sitting like Forrest and Bubba back to back, and all of a sudden elephant trumpets, and Pat says he feels Lou jump immediately, and he says, calm down, Lou. Those are just elephants. He's like, are they coming for us? He's like, no, not unless you start bothering them. And several of those like that. I love those two together. Great stories.
Well, you know what? DeSada he was a kind of a quiet guy. He was just a good man. And the story was about him was he didn't he requested Vietnam again. He didn't want to go home, but he didn't want to go into combat. He didn't want to be with the 173rd. So he got back and he volunteers for SOG. And he thought, well, that sounds like he didn't know what it was.
No.
This is him telling me. I interviewed him one time, but just a great. And he said, he didn't know what it was. He thought it was, he'd be like working as a clerk somewhere. He gets over there, and the first place they put him is Khe Sanh on a team with Pat. And I mean, he did well, and he was. The funny thing is, he was a quiet guy and all that, but he did everything that was asked of him. I mean, you just don't know about people until they're put up against it, and until they're tested.
You mentioned Nha Trang and not liking how modernized and almost American it was, and that's actually what Lou likes to say when he went to Nha Trang looking to drop is it a 1014 or a 1099 to change over to SF, and he immediately sees the Dairy Queen, and he's like, you mean if I'm in special forces I get to eat Dairy Queen every day? Line me up, I'm in. And like you said, immediately.
Oh, is that what he was talking? Okay. Yeah. Well, it had the opposite effect on me. And I saw that. It was like there was like an E7 that was running a play. I thought, Mike, this is a Green Beret. And it hit me the wrong way at that time. I don't know. I hadn't been through a whole a year with the 173rd like Lou did. So I mean, my attitude might have been different.
Maybe a bit.
I don't know, but that's interesting. That
yes,
was.
sir.
Man, that's
Was George? I know you have a high affinity for and everybody. I'm still trying to get him on as well. But I know you speak very highly every time we've spoken of the troll, George Sternberg. Was he around
absolutely.
at Khe Sanh with you?
Yeah, what was the last thing you said? I'm sorry.
What was he at Khe Sanh while you were at Khe
Oh,
Sanh?
absolutely, absolutely. He was there. In fact, he was. Let me tell you a little bit. I was thinking about George in anticipation of this interview because I wanted to point out something that yeah, some people might have a question about, and that is, yeah, there he is. That's a tough little cookie right there. But you know what? He did a lot. And I'm going to tell you one episode. I don't know if you've already heard this. Just let me know, and we won't need to go through it. But he wasn't especially highly decorated, but he should have been. Um, he's one of those guys. You sometimes those awards are sort of hit and miss. I know guys that should have gotten higher awards and gotten no awards or weren't even written up because of their rank, because for a variety of reasons. Well, there are too many medals on this thing. We can't give out any more medals. I heard that one time, and it was like, it didn't. And it was anyway. I won't go into that. But George, I want to make mention of him because he did a lot, man. I'll tell you, at Long Bay when they had the first tanks, remember when they got overrun with tanks? Well, George and Mike Tucker, they were like Mutt and Jeff. It was an old. Have you ever heard of Mutt and Jeff?
Oh yes, sir.
Okay. Well, you had the real tall, skinny guy, and then you got the short guy, and that was Mike Tucker. Mike Tucker was like 6'2", and George was like 5'6", maybe. And there they are. There they are. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah. And they were everywhere together, man. And that was at Khe Sanh and then later at FOB. And when they were before, I don't know, George is a great storyteller, one of the best storytellers, especially when he gets going. And he was telling us at one of the reunions, he talked about when he and Tucker went out, and this was prior to the incident there at Long Bay. They went on a mission and went in the area and was over into Laos, and they found tank tracks. Did you ever hear about that?
I think I've heard murmurs,
right. And they took photos of them. I saw the photos up at Khe Sanh. There was no question that they were, and he went down, and it was a big deal. He went down to Saigon and stayed there at House 10, I guess, and then he went over and he got debriefed. Well, he said later on that there was a Marine colonel there at the debriefing that just didn't believe him.
Jeez.
And I don't know why. I thought he said it was a Marine. Maybe not. Maybe it was an Army colonel. But at any rate, they didn't warn Long Bay. Now, okay, let's just assume that it's incorrect information. Wouldn't you warn them anyway? Wouldn't you let them know we've got this? Wouldn't you?
What's it gonna hurt?
So that you go out there and you test your recoilless rifles. You make sure that those things are working. Doesn't take much. There's a lot of preparation you can do that doesn't take much. They were, they didn't.
None of the law rockets, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So George did a great job, and Mike Tucker did a great job. Those guys were just, George was hilarious and ran a lot of missions, and in my view, doesn't get enough credit for everything that both those guys did. There were other guys like that too. Smitty is another one, although he was recognized much later, and he received a couple of soldiers medals for some extraordinary stuff. John Smith, who was on my team there at Mylock after I got, should I go through the thing where I got kicked off of Alabama team?
We're pretty much about there, aren't we? Are we about to be back at FOB 1?
Okay, yeah, we're going. So we left at Khe Sanh. We're up at Khe Sanh in the first of June. We abandoned Khe Sanh, so did the Marines. I moved initially to Mylock with the first few guys there because we were looking for water. I remember that. We wanted to find a water source. We did that, and then very shortly thereafter, I was moved down to FOB 1 and given Alabama team. Now, Alabama team was had been wiped out, virtually wiped out, just a couple months before that. Why they didn't change the name, I don't know. Maybe they ran out of states or something. But I took over Alabama team, and there was only the team leader. God bless him. Imagine being a team leader and losing your entire team. I talked to him. I didn't talk to him. I knew that they put him on some security detail there at the FOB, and I knew who he was. I never talked to him. I just didn't want to ever bring it up. I didn't want to be a source of pain for him. But Cowboy was the only one left. Conduan, you heard of him. I don't know if you talked to him or met him.
No.
He was the interpreter. And the reason that he didn't go, I don't know. I'm going to tell you this pretty quickly, but it's a great story.
Oh, yes, please.
And he told me about it much later after we got back because he used to visit me. And what happened there was, they were supposed to go, Alabama team, they were supposed to go out and on that mission, and they were sort of on hold. And so I think they were supposed to go the next day. Anyway, Cowboy is leaving the compound. He's going down to the village and have a couple beers and then come back and then be ready to go out on the mission the next day. And so as he's leaving the compound, this one of the Cambodians who were on the camp security there, they had cam boats, and his name was he was known as the Magic Gambler. You ever heard of this?
I've heard that name. Yes.
Okay, the Magic Gambler. So he approaches Cowboy, and here's the deal about the Magic Gambler. He always gambled, and he never lost. He always won. But his thing, something from the skies above, I don't know. They had their amulets and all that. They were superstitious, the Cambodians. But he was of the feeling that if he spent the money, then he'd never win again. So all the money that he won, he would have to give it away. He never kept any of it. So he catches Cowboy going out the gate. He says, and he walks up to Cowboy and he says, "Do you like motorcycles?" And he was talking about the little Honda 50s, that motorcycle. He says, "Yeah, I like motorcycles." He says, "Well, take this and go buy a motorcycle." That's what he says to him. And he gave him like $700 or some $500, a lot of money. So Cowboy, he leaves, he goes down, this is cool. And so it was still light out. He goes down and he buys a Honda 50. He'd never ridden a Honda 50 in his life. He goes down, shop not too far away, fills it up with gas, takes off on it, drives down the road, and I don't remember whether this is that afternoon or the next morning. It doesn't really matter. But so he's riding his Honda 50 and he crashes it in the road, right there in the road, and he hurt himself. He hurt his knee, and he's standing there. He's sitting there on the side of the road. He's got his little mashed up Honda 50, And the two guys that were from that team, Alabama team, the two fellas, they were coming after him because they got noticed that they were going to launch. So they put his Honda 50 through in the back of the Jeep. He jumps in the back of the Jeep and they drove back. Well, he couldn't go because he was injured. He couldn't go on that mission. And that's the mission that everyone was killed except for the 1-0. So when I took over the team, Cowboy was the only one left, and he was the interpreter. And so what they did was they took one or two guys from the existing teams that didn't know each other, and they put them on Alabama team. Brand new guy. Well, they weren't brand new guys. They had been trained. They were on those teams. But what do you get? There they are. If you're me, you're going in, you're taking over a team, and you're aware of the fact that these guys were leftovers from another team. Do you think the other team's going to get rid of their best men?
No.
Well, my feeling going into that was I had a bunch of leftovers. And then I had Cowboy, who was this song and dance man. And I read him completely wrong, man, because he was a tough son of a gun. But he was one of these, Schaaf, and he didn't speak English that well. I mean, they were always trying to get me to do something that I shouldn't do. Okay, so very brief. So I had these guys, and so we get into the training. We go on a local mission out on this peninsula. They called it an island, but it was turned out to be a bad guy. They weren't NDA, they were the Vietnam kind of guys. And there were a bunch of them up there on the top of this mountain. And I heard a little bit about it, but not much. And found out a lot more after he got back. But anyway, we moved for a training mission, moved on one side, got put in with the chain. The radio operator was Len Black, and the other fellow was
Steve Engelke.
Yeah, Steve Engelke. Yeah, and he was. It didn't matter which one, but Black had experience with a radio and had been with the 173rd before and had combat experience, etc. And seemed sharp. So he carried the radio. So we got in there and we moved around, mostly during the day. Strike that. Mostly at night because it was pretty open. There were areas there that were pretty open. It was a training mission. I went around the edges of this peninsula and moved at night mostly and slept during the day. Tried to sleep a little bit. And then we got around to the front. It was the third day. The front of the thing was a beautiful beach. And then behind us, there were these rice paddies. Some of them were being used and some of them were dry. Big areas were rice paddies. So we're at the edge of that rice paddy. And I don't know these guys. I wasn't really that impressed with them the first few days because they were acting like they were hot shots. In my view, they're leftovers. And I try to keep an open mind and all that kind of thing, but they probably weren't that impressed with me either. But, so we were laying there and was thinking about getting pulled out that afternoon. And we were talking about it a little bit, and all of a sudden there were a couple of the Indians had seen. There were three guys about. They could see three fellows coming out. It was an outcropping, a huge rock out on the higher part of this mountain that was behind us, and they're probably about 1,500 feet away. And they were just kind of out there and we're looking, and you couldn't really tell what they were doing, but it was probably up to sneaky business. They weren't up there for a picnic. And so as we were watching those guys, Out of my eye, I saw movement in my left eye. And I looked over on the other side. We were on one side of the rice paddy, dry rice paddy, and the other side was about 50 yards, 60, 70 yards away. I saw the tops of 2 or 3 guys' heads, just the tops of them, and they're moving right to left. And to myself, I thought, well, this is quite a coincidence here, isn't it? And right about then, I turned around, I told Black, I told the others, the engaged team leader, so there you got guys, told them about that. Nobody else saw it. Nobody else saw these guys on the team. And keep this in mind, we're trying to get out of there and go home anyway. And they'd already seen these guys up on the hill. So, I mean, they went along with it, but I don't think they believed me. And I was the only one that saw these guys. I told Black, okay, get on the horn, get on the radio and see what's going on. I'm going to crawl over here to the left, down here and see what's going on over there, because it was it was sort of the end of the dike there, where this hedge all the way, the whole length of the other, on the other side of the rice paddy there. And it was very thick, and it was about 6 feet tall. It just so happened that it was dipped down there where I saw the tops of their head. So I crawled over there, and right on the edge, I'm right on the edge of the dike, and it's lined up. And I'm laying there, and about 60 yards away, these 3 guys are standing there, plain as day. Nobody on the team could see them. And I'm out maybe 20 yards from them. And I wanted to shoot them, start a firefight, and get the hell out of there, frankly. But I wanted to alert the team, because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how many guys there were, etc. So I wanted to go back and alert the team. And I said, okay, there's 3 guys down here. I'm going to start. Let's, and they look at me like, yeah, okay. I don't know if they even believed me then, honestly. I said, okay, I'm going to go back. I'm going to start thing. And Black told him to get on the horn. Let's get a helicopter and get out of here. This is true. This is true. I mean, it was like, yeah, we've been there long enough to shoot these guys and get a ride home. So I crawled back down there, and I get down there, and there's only one of them there. He's standing there. And he was walking away, and then he turned back around, and I shot him, hit him twice. Well, I couldn't tell the first time whether I hit him or not, and then he started to fall. And then those other 2 guys jumped out from behind the bush, and they grabbed him, one on either side. They were trying to drag him back in, and I opened up on them and flipped it to auto and hit them. And then that whole line there across the rice paddy where all that hole opened up on us. They opened up on us. There were a bunch of guys in there. And so our guys are in a firefight, and then for some reason, the ditch team leader got up and said, charge. And they started to run across the rice paddy, and I'm yelling at them. What the hell are you doing, you idiot? Maybe they're trying to prove themselves. I don't know, but it was stupid. And then, just as they do that, on the hill behind us, a machine gun opens up, and I'm just watching them running. The machine gun just hits about 10 feet behind me. You see a dirt getting kicked up. They come to a screeching halt. It looked like something out of one of those old movies, you know, Charlie Chaplin or something. Because they stopped and turned around and ran back, and then they got in the perimeter, and then we engaged some of these other guys, because there were guys around us at that point. And so Black gets on. Black did something that was really, I wanted to mention, was good. He called up our combo guys at FOB FOB1 wanted to get some help out of there, and the commo guys recording Black and said, you firefight, right? He thought he was joking or something. But and so, but they also said that all the H-34s had already gone home, so we had no. So it was sort of, I guess it was a bit flippant about it. We're right in the middle of a pretty damn good firefight and in a vulnerable position. And Black remembered he had been at a club, one of these Navy, it was a Navy unit, and they were the airboat guys, and he had made friends with them. And they gave him their call sign. They gave him their combo information. He gets on the horn and calls them up. Said, we're in a firefight, we're right out here. Because they were based right on the other side of the bay. And they came hauling ass out there, two of those airboats. And they've got cannons on the front of them. I don't know what kind of cannons they were. And they're coming up, and we only had to wait for 15 minutes, really. So we have a good firefight going, and they coming up, boom, boom, boom. They're hitting the side of that mountain. And then so we're getting ready. They come up with those airboats and come up. They can't come up very far. So we've got like 200 yards between us. There are some dry rice paddies, and then the beach, and then the water, and everything is open. So the firefight had started to calm down, and we're, okay, we had to run out through these in the open, across these rice paddies to get to the boats. And I asked for volunteers. Who wants to? None of them said shit. And so I took off, and I'm running Serpentine. Remember that movie? I saw that movie. I thought it was hilarious. So I'm running as fast as I can, but they came right after me, and we all went out there in a line. Nobody got hit. Jumped on the airboats, and the airboats took us home. So that was that deal. But it was there was some luck involved there for sure. And I kicked myself in the ass after that for being in that position in the first place. I let my, I shouldn't have been in that. I shouldn't have had that team out there in that position, for sure. But thank God it worked out. And then you go through that situation. Those guys don't know me. I don't know them. That's Black on. It was this photo was taken after. I don't know. It could have been taken just before we launched into the one I've just described, or it could have been when we went out on what is it, Sierra 3, or in the that was ended up being where Black had to take over the team, and the new team leader was killed. That was a terrible situation. It should have never happened, but it's easy for me to say. Black did a hell of a job. The whole team did a hell of a job, except for the 1-0 whose name I won't mention, who had taken over. So after that one that we did, the one that I just described, we got back the next day. The next day we went out and went down to the village, and we had beer, and we had this marinated ham and garlic. It was freaking awesome. It was really good. They had it on a string, and they had little pods. You just pulled it off, and that was excellent. And none of us got worms, which is awesome. So the next day, we had a few beers. The next morning, a couple of these little idiots come in to my hooch and wake me up. Say, Trump, see, we just go away. We can go to the world's greatest ice cream. This is what they were pitching it. They're pitching the world's greatest ice cream. So after I had a cup of coffee, and okay, we'll go to it. So I got a deuce and a half truck. By this time, Way had been, had been after a Tet, and the Marines that was a big battle. Everybody's aware of all that. It was a hell of a deal. The Marines kicked some ass there too. But the North Vietnamese anyway, they got booted out of there. So by the time we went down there, they didn't allow any weapons in Way. So we weren't allowed to take our shit with us. So we took our pistols and we just put them underneath we weren't supposed to do that anyway, of course, but we did. There's no way I was going to drive around with
No, God almighty, no.
weapons. So we drove down, go to the ice cream parlor. There's this big ice cream cone right on this, this sign in front of the place. I wonder what kind of store that is. So we go in, a nice little Vietnamese girl. I don't think there were anybody else in the place but us. It was good ice cream, actually. We're sitting there goofing around. I didn't even realize a couple of them weren't there, but right across the street, there was this canal. It was a beautiful city, really, an ancient city. And so one of them comes running in. I said, where have you been? And what his story was. The two of them went over to the Sampans, which along the river there, they're tied up, and they're little places where young women
floating brothel.
It was a floating brothel. So they were over there, and the white mice. You know who the white mice were?
Oh yes, sir.
Okay. Well, the white mice came by and were hassling them, and then they searched them and found the handguns, and they arrested the one guy, and that was he was killed on that next mission. I'm trying to think of his name. I'll think of it.
Kong or
no, Kong.
Kwong, yes, sir. Was it Kwong?
Kong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is this the world famous, shall we say, RT Alabama jailbreak?
Yeah. Well, here's what happened. I'll make it short because I don't know. I mean, I don't know what time we started, and I didn't intend to go on this long. Really,
we're at 2 hours, and we're about done. If we can make it to my lock, we'll be good. As long as you've got time, we're good.
Well, I have my biggest mission. I ran a lot of missions, and when we finally got up to my lock, and that was a 7-day mission. There's so much happened on that mission, you can't even believe it. Everything. It was like anyway. But okay, so we're I take the team in. We go jump in the truck. We leave our ice cream melting there. We go drive over to where the white mice headquarters is. It's a big white building surrounded by chain link fence about 15 feet high, and then concertina wire on top of it. And we walk through the gate. I think Black went up there with me. Walk into the gate and walk into the place, and the stereotypical guy out of the old World War II movie, the little the CEO of this place. He was a greasy little guy who just looked like he would be working that job. And so, basically he said, no, we can't release him to you. We have to have a Vietnamese officer. And I said, my brain's going, and I'm thinking, okay, I'll grab one of those little Vietnamese guys up at the FOB that are walking around doing nothing. We'll drag him down here and we'll get him out. So we go back to the truck and drive all the way back to Phu Bai, looking around for these little ARVN officers who are supposed to be liaison. They don't do anything. I never had a conversation with them because you don't know which one of them are
trustworthy
or VC. And so anyway, couldn't find any, and couldn't find him. Looked all over the compound. Didn't tell anybody about our the officers. Otherwise, they wouldn't have let me do what I did. And so, so the guys are getting agitated. It's like a group of Indians, around the campfire at night, and they're getting ready for big. They're like, no, and they were getting really excited. And so I looked around and said, okay, go get your shit. Go get your shit, and then meet back at the truck. Cowboy goes and gets M60 machine guns to add to the fracas. And so we all got into that truck, had all our shit, everybody's loaded for bear. We got into the truck, drove back. On the way there, driving back, and I see this Vietnamese officer, turns out to be a pilot. He's hitchhiking along the road. I thought, there he is.
Perfect.
There he is. So I pulled over, put him in the truck. Cowboy's on the other side. And the cowboy's telling him about and this is the deal. And the guy agrees to it. He said, yeah, I'll do that. Sure. So he was a good guy. So we pull up to the jail. And it was, I think it was Black and me, and we have our weapons, and half of the team jumped out of the truck and went along the fence on one side, half on the other side, and then two guys put that M60 machine gun on the cab of that deuce and a half and pointed it right at the front door. You talking about a bunch of little white mice pissing in their pants? Can you imagine?
This is a scene out of a movie.
We were just trying to get our guy, But so I think it was Black and me. We walk up to the door. You go through the gate, and then it's about 30 yards to the front door of the jail there, and there's a walkway there. And we got up about 15 feet from the front door, and the door opens, and it's that greasy little commander, and he's got chrome, and he's walked him out, and thank you very much. Sorry for the problems, Walking on the sidewalk there, I saw some guy on the second floor. He was like looking out the window, and I looked up at him, and he just disappeared. Anyway, so we got back in the truck and went home, and that was it. So
they had been, for lack of a better term, they'd been beating the hell out of him with rubber hoses, weren't they?
They did. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well, we knew that was going to happen, and Cowboy knew that, and probably a couple of them had been there. Here was the conflict here. They hated our guys because they had to compete with the young girls at these clubs, and our guys got paid 4 times as much money there. They also had this panache.
Oh yeah.
They're SOG guys, man. Nobody messed with them, and they were so they were kind of, they were. But something just happened there. I don't know what it was.
We've still got you.
All right. We still got you, son.
Yeah. All good. Yes, sir. So you've the MyLock and all, of course, that'll end up being your last work, but you're at MyLock and end up working a bit, trying to find some water, and of course your amazing brew, wanting to learn about America. And they're
yeah, that's right, America. You tell us, Chauncey, about America. There's a lot to that, and there was a brew team up there. I went back. Well, here's what happened there. We tried to get into Alabama team. A week later, we tried to get into. It was Ashout 2.
Oh yes,
was the number. Black had forgotten that, or something happened, but we got shot out of the first LG. There were 3 NVA I'm hanging, looking out the door. Cowboy's right next to me, and there were 3 NVA on the LG, and we opened up on them. And then the helicopter, they were H-34s. They take off. We go to the alternate LZ. We pull into the old alternate LZ, which wasn't too far away, not far enough, because they had heard what was going on, apparently, because they opened up on the second LZ. We pull off of that. And we're heading towards the third LZ. And I look back. It was an H-34. You only have a door on the right side. I look back at my team, the Indians, and they're lined up there like 7 little birds. And they're all staring at me, and their eyes they look like, they didn't look Asian anymore. Their eyes are as big as
saucers,
as plums. And I turned back to the pilot, and I just gave him, no, I'm not going. Because that would have been, so we ended up going back. And then a couple of days, few days later, Jax assigns this other, he was an E7, I think, E6 or 7. And here I am an E5, just made E5. And he looked at me, and we incorporated him into the training, etc. And after about 4 or 5 days, I realized he wasn't listening at all.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't listening at all. He just didn't get it. He didn't understand.
It's a dumb thing to do.
So Jax calls me in, and okay, Jax says he's going to be an observer. You're going to go back. You're still going to go back into ASHA 2. And by that time, I had a plan devised where we were going to insert outside of the area and walk into it because we had already used up our LCs, right? So, okay, well, he can go with this, and he's in it, apparently be the 1-0 after I leave because I was getting ready to retire. I'd been on a team almost a year. And anyway, so anyway, we a couple days later, or the next day, Jax calls me back in there. I don't know what happened. I think Jax and this guy knew each other in Germany. I don't know. I had heard that. But anyway, Jax calls me, Major Jax. There he is right there. God bless him. I didn't like him. They thought I was really had some serious bad feelings about him, and some of them were concerned. But I wasn't crazy. So at any rate, he calls me into his office, just the two of us, and he says, well, there's been a change again. Sergeant What's-His-Face is going to be the 1-0. You're going to be the advisor.
God.
My back got, and I said, I can't do that, sir. And I wasn't a obstreperous type of a guy at all. I took orders, and I was smart enough to realize where I was and who I was. And I said, I'm not going to go in under those circumstances, whatever words I used. And I said, and if you send him in that area with that team, and I told him this is true. Somebody's going to get killed.
Mm.
And so, and then I turned around without bidding adieu. I turned around, walked out. 10 minutes later, Sergeant Major comes over to my hooch. I'm laying there on my bunk. And he says, I don't know, this is exact words. He puts his head in the door, opens the screen door, puts his head in. He says, I don't know what you did, but you're out of here.
Dang.
And within a half hour or so, I was on a helicopter for Mylock. That's what happened. And then I got back to Mylock, and Major Sincere, Clyde Sincere, God bless him, there he is. He was waiting for me at the pad. I get off the helicopter, and he gives me, that was a good man right there.
I hate we lost him. I miss our talks. He was a good man.
I tried to get to his service, and I drove all the way out there. I got about 150 miles from him, this big old sandstorm, and they closed off the highways. I had to turn around and come back. came all the way back to Colorado. I tried to make it, didn't make it. But he was. I thought a lot of Clay.
He cared a lot about you guys on the ground as an officer.
Yeah. He was. Well, he was one of the originals. The kids, of course, he was an NCO, so he knew and all of that. But he was in a tough spot. He had to do his job. Guys were getting killed. And he knew some of these guys that he was assigning to these teams and these missions, and it had to have been hard on him because he was a good man. Anyway, so where was I? That's me. Now that I don't know where that came from, but I'm probably standing there in a drunken stupor. That's it, my lock. And that was before we had a full a finished product in the way of a defensive position, and because we ended up having they made some hooches for us, and so anyway, yeah. So I got up there and Clyde, I mean, right there, he said, you want to run? He said, if you agree to run some more missions, I'll let you pick your own team.
Wow.
And I thought, hell, and I think by that I was starting to get my back up a little bit. I just got kicked out of FOB 1, and I don't know. I ended up doing more missions and picked up Smitty as my 1-1. John Smith, great man on the ground. Miss him a lot. He passed away a couple of years ago, and then also and that first mission, this second lieutenant, or he was maybe a first lieutenant. There he is, Armstrong. He was my radio operator then, and he you can tell there he's like 6'1" maybe, and but he had size 15-inch shoe.
Good God Almighty.
Yeah, so I was concerned about that, honestly. But when we trained for that, seriously, I worked out a thing where I moved half the team and then moved him and then moved the second half of the team just for noise discipline, because I was big on noise discipline and all of that other stuff, not running a trail. And of course, that's exactly what we did when we first got on the ground. We literally ran down a trail. That was nuts. It ended up being a 7-day mission, and I got stung by a giant Asian hornet. We ended up in a cave where there's primates and monkeys or whatever the hell they were, and they were sleeping. We found their beds on the ground the next morning. And they surrounded us, and I thought it was NBA, but it turned out to be a bunch of monkeys. One pulled on my handset, 25, and he's yanking. He yanked on it. Everything you could think happened. We found 3 truck parks, tanks and trucks, and moved really well. Had some trackers. Actually, got rid of at least one tracker. We got rid of all the trackers that surrounded us around the LZ initially. It was fortunate because we had some good luck involved in that, because it started raining. And anyway, that was when we have another time. That's a whole interview right there. That mission was.
Oh yeah, and I was gonna say, if you would be open to it, because I know I've had you 2 hours and 30 minutes. I think you're right. I mean, that would be one that would be very intriguing to hear about, because just the notes on it in this is several pages. So
yeah, well, I didn't want it to go on this long. I just.
This is, you don't understand. This is the stuff that we've got 16 members in here and another 30 watching actively live. So, I mean, this is the stuff we live for. I mean, this is right
Yeah,
up our alley, sir.
yeah, and we all appreciate all that. We all appreciate it. Anyway, I was on to close it off. I was on three. I was on Anaconda and then KRAIT and then Alabama team that then I ran with on a couple of others as strap hangers. And then I had that brew team up there at Mylock that really didn't even have a name. I don't know. They must have identified it as Schaaf's team or something. And we ran a number of missions. They were yeah, up in the DMZ, and then that one I've just told you about. We got that thing done, man. We got shot out. Another helicopter got shot down. Everything happened everything that could have happened on a mission, except we actually got out and got home. Ran out of. That was just unbelievable. That was unbelievable.
Jeez.
Lost like 15 pounds. Ran out of food. Ran out of water.
That was what was so surprising talking to you. I think the mission detail, and of course, if we do a part 2, you'll get into that. But y'all anticipated like not packing for. I think you only packed 2 meals or 1 meal, and
one day. That was one day. All I brought was a bag of India's rice and some. They had these toffees in the Indians rations. I had a handful of them, and then I had a handful of lifesavers, which is a whole story. And that, there's funny stuff. My gosh.
surviving off the lifesavers. I think that's what we'll do. If you'll be open to it,
Sure.
we'll do a whole mission on that. And if you don't mind, there are a few questions as we're starting to close out here, and people have been batting down the hatches here on this one. Are you working on a biography or a book at this time?
I am. I've been writing it. I was a district attorney, and then retired, and then started thinking about writing a book about all of this stuff, all of the mostly what I did, as opposed to what other people did. I hope it didn't come off too braggadocious.
No, sir, not at all.
But there was a lot there, and we did a lot. It has a lot to do also with all the great men that I worked with. I think there were like 13 or 14 that I actually was on the ground with. And so I talk about them. Anyway, yes, I've got more than enough pages done for a book. It's just a matter of, I got over 100,000 words written. So it's a matter of going through it and start. I'll be adding to it and subtracting and sort of organizing it, but it'll have everything in there that we not only talked about, but a lot of other things.
Excellent. Thanks.
My period of time there was chopped up. I went one, and not everybody at FOB1, for instance, knew what I had done before that. They knew that I was an E5 coming in as an experienced 1-0, which was very unusual. But we didn't talk about that stuff. We didn't talk about what we did. That was the other thing, there was no bullshit in the club.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't learn about a man off the back of his bumper sticker off the back of his truck. It was about your reputation. And that was, I love that, because there was no bullshit. You couldn't fool these guys. So it was who you were. As terrible as that year was, it was also one of the best in my life, because it was, I met some of the the greatest men in my life, and also they were some of the funniest guys ever. And yeah, love those guys. Love them.
Absolutely. It's been an honor getting to hear and learn about all of these gentlemen, as well as your story from you. It's been just fantastic. We'll hit a few questions that people have been clamoring for, and then we'll save the rest of them for when we do that part two. Because I'm sure once you put the book out, you'll do a little press junket, and you can visit us again to get little words out.
Great. That'd be great. I appreciate that.
Excellent, excellent. Okay. With you being in 68 and 67, 68, people have been curious about, they always ask about, what was your weapon of choice? Most of the photos we see, you were a CAR-15 man. Was it always the CAR-15, or did you experiment, or?
Okay. I love the CAR-15. Never had a malfunction. So you go with what works for you. It was light. It's a great weapon. Fired a little faster than M16. You could carry a lot of rounds. The rounds aren't that big. People talk about these fellows saying, from reading that the round itself, the 5.56 round, was not that powerful enough. That's baloney.
Yeah.
Blow people up with that 5.56 round, and I think that's mostly from people that never shot anybody with it. It brings to mind the fact that I think there was 30 or 40. I read up on this, and the actual number of rounds that were fired in Vietnam, rifle rounds, 30 to 40,000 of them for each individual enemy that was killed. So there's a lot of rounds flying through the air, but not very many shooters.
Wow.
A shooter is somebody that can point that weapon at a target and pull that trigger, aiming it. Now, whether you're on fully automatic, in my case with fully automatic, it would only be two or three rounds at a time, or single shot. Single shot is good, man. That was plenty accurate. That little weapon was plenty accurate for anything that you needed it for. Most of our encounters with the enemy were close. The furthest away was that one episode there on that island, and that was no more than 60 yards away. So anyway, yeah, and I did take out a shotgun. I took a shotgun. I also had, as you already know, I had a sawed-off M79 that came in handy once in a while. I always, when we RO'd, I laid my rifle here, and I had my sawed-off M79 with a shotgun round in it for the first shot before I grabbed my CAR-15. I always had that. Used it on a couple of occasions, and it's surprisingly accurate with the HE rounds. I mean, you could get out to 100, 150 yards and pop them in there pretty good. Just line of sight, yeah. So anyway, that was like I said, I took a shotgun one time, 12 gauge shotgun, because the area was so dense, and it seemed to me at the time that it lended it to more to a shotgun than a CAR-15. In retrospect, it didn't matter, but I did take the shotgun out once. I love the CAR-15. As I said, as you know, we had our little armories there in every one of those FOBs, and we had basically everything you can think of, down to
RPDs, RPGs, AKs, silenced pistols,
Brens, Stens, shotguns. That little piece of crap that they used in World War II was a 45 caliber. You know,
Grease gun.
the grease gun. Yeah, I had a grease gun with a silencer on it. It looked like, and it just go poof poof. But the thing is, the silencer slows the. You know, it's a 45 anyway. It's slow enough. But then when you add a silencer on, you could see the bullets coming out of the end of the silencer. Yeah.
Holy crap! Wow, yeah. That's the Jerry Shriver special for a bit as well. He enjoyed that one.
Jerry Shriver. Okay.
Did you were you a pistol guy? Did you carry a pistol, or did you use the M79 as a pistol kind of?
That was too much. I took one time. I took out that the 22 high standard with the silencer on it. Only one time. The damn thing was this long. I put it down my shirt. You just don't. You know, I hear about all of these guys now. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. You know, they have 1,500 rounds and 30 magazines, and that's just asking for it. You can't move quietly in the jungle with that much crap. You know, you got 150 pounds of junk with you. How many claymores
can you carry?
I've heard that recently, and it's nonsense. Never heard that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, 15 claymores. I don't know what setting up a defensive. You have to be realistic. You only have 6 or 7 or 8 guys. You're not going to battle the world. You are a very sharp, pointed object, and you can create a hell of a mess. But it's amazing how short term that is. I mean, it just doesn't last that long. You've got to have other things in mind. You've got to get E&E into your head. They're moving around from usually coming at you from different directions, different elements of men. That was one of the big problems because in Laos, they spread their troops out. They didn't concentrate their troops because of our bombings. Laos, I don't know if you know this, but Laos is the most bombed country in the history of the world. And so the North Vietnamese weren't stupid. They spread their troops out. So when we'd go in and one little element would find us, there'd be guys over here, guys from back here, guys in trucks coming up from the bottom of the road, and they're all trying to surround you, and you got to get the hell out of there. Usually through helicopters, honestly, many times, most times, the teams would have been even more unfortunate than many of them were, because it was really hard to move around those guys. Now, if you got it early and you can move, and sometimes, you know, I was on that mission I was just telling you about, that one that had everything in it. Number one rule is never walk a trail. Well, we ran down a trail. And the reason I did that was to get outside of the collapsing circle that the trackers had us in. And we did. We got outside them. We got into the thickest crap we could. We crawled for hours on our bellies, and then we condensed ourselves, our little thing there, and we shut up for the rest of the day. And we lost them. We lost trackers. We lost them. It rained. We had some unfortunate circumstances, but that was, you take all those chances, and that was it was amazing, you know. And then we went on for 6 more days. Couldn't find us. So wow. Very, very fortunate, and you know. So anyway.
Yeah. Last question, because like I said, we'll have plenty of time to knock out all of the viewer questions when we do our part 2. This one will be kind of strange to answer in a bit of a way, but In your SOG career as a starting as a 1-2, a 1-1, and then a 1-0, what do you think this actually two parts on this. One, what are you most proud of in your SOG career? And two, what do you think made a good SOG man?
Oh, well, I'll take two first. I think making a good SOG man just is having being able to work under incredible pressure and still being able to think and prioritize. And if you can do that, and that, I think those were the best men, because everybody got you. Some of them just fell from the pressure, collapsed from the pressure. There's so much before you get on that helicopter. Some of those guys are traumatized. Can't even talk. That's just getting on the freaking helicopter. Yeah. And when you get out in there and it flies away and you hear this, psychologically, it's the first time that happened to me, man. I thought I was screaming. What I was doing was I was screaming inside. It was like, good God, what did you do? And that was good because I was aware of how freaking dangerous it was. And I was nuts for being there. But you sort of, a certain type of personality sort of gets addicted. And I know I did. And I'm glad I got out. You know, I ran a lot of missions over 15 months, never went back, got away from it. And that was good. Mm. That was good because it was,
it can suck you in.
The first question you had?
The first question was, in your career as a 1-2, 1-1, and 1-0, what are you most proud of in your time in SOG?
I think just running as many missions as I did consistently and having success in their purpose. And then I will also say that one 7-day mission, which they said was the longest in the year. But Major Jacks came out to me and they brought me in a Jeep, and and before I showered and shaved, he even opened up the food place for me. So, and he said, "Congratulations, Sergeant Schaaf. This was the longest mission run in this whole year." He was, wow. I think he was trying to make up for what was
what transpired earlier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we never talked about that. There was no need to. And I still didn't like it, but
that's understandable.
I understand it's a difficult position to be in, but at any rate, yeah. So that would be the other thing. Just that 7-day mission was, and then overall, just being able to do it and coming home,
and making sure as many of your men made it home. You had a lot of missions to where, you lost some men, but you didn't lose all that many. That's got to be a feather in your cap as well, feeling good that you brought as many of your boys home as you did.
Well, it was every single time. That was, you got the mission. What are you out there for anyway? Except, get your guys back, but doing a mission. You can easily get off those teams. You don't have to do that. Don't bullshit anybody. Don't go out there and sit in a hole for 3 days and then call for an extraction. Go out and do it. If you're not going to do it, why go? Why go at all if you're not going to do it? So that was. And I think a lot of the guys, most of the guys had those same feelings.
Yeah, I definitely. Well, guys, in case you've not read, which if you're a SOG fan, I would certainly hope you've read at least the first one. Mr. Tim is mentioned in John Stryker Meyer's Across the Fence in chapter 5, I believe. No, I'm mixing that up. Chapter 5. And then Roger Lockshear, who we've had on, he has written 2 books, but Mr. Tim and some of the other gentlemen Mr. Tim worked with is mentioned in We Saved SOG Souls by Roger Lockshear. So if y'all don't have those, please jump out there and you can read about Mr. Tim on ST Alabama and some of his Khe Sanh and MyLock operations. And like we said earlier, the book is in process. And when he finishes up, he will come back and join us and we'll do some questions, talk about that 7-day operation. And Mr. Tim, I want to thank you. And is there anything you'd like to say before we shut down?
Well, just thank you, Bud. You do a great job. I think it's an important job. It really is. Especially when we have all this technology, and if we don't capture some of these incredible stories from these guys that are truly incredible people. I don't know if they make them like Pat Watkins anymore,
No.
or John Smith, or
No.
so many of those guys I worked with. They're just, you don't realize them until you get back and you go through. Those are the best men I've ever been around, and I still think about them all the time. And yeah,
that's why I'm glad you men are coming on here and sharing their stories and memorialize them like you have been, because there's a whole generation that needs to know. They know the Lynn Blacks and the John Stryker Myers and all of that, but there's a whole group of SOG men that need to be known and made household names. And I'm just glad y'all are coming on here to share your personal stories, but also while sharing personal stories, memorializing the men that you worked with, bled with, and shed tears with over in Vietnam.
Yeah, and Lynn Black's one of the real guys. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Lynn Black's one of the real guys for sure.
We love Mr. Lynn. I hope to get him on one day. So I keep trying. We've spoken numerous times, but we'll see if we can get him on. But I want to thank you. I hope the writing goes along smoothly. We'll be anticipating, and you've got I hope you'll come here to do a little promotional tour whenever you get it finished.
Good, for sure, Bud. Thank you so much, and good luck to you. And you're doing a great job. I think you're doing like I said, a really important job too.
I appreciate that greatly, and I will stay in touch with you as usual. And guys, if y'all have any questions after watching this that y'all can't get done until we do the part 2, get them to me, and I'll get them to Mr. Tim, and I'll answer them for you. So everyone, have a great day. Thank you all for joining me and Mr. Tim. And Mr. Tim, thank you as well for joining us. It meant a lot.
You take care of yourself.
Yes, sir. And I hope you have